The widowed farmer was searching for the perfect wife until he saw the poorest woman in town. Thomas had been a farmer all his life. The early mornings, the smell of wet soil, the crowing of roosters, these were all things he knew well. But since the day his wife had passed, those mornings had become lonelier and the nights longer. He worked tirelessly in the fields, plowing, planting, and harvesting, but no matter how much he accomplished, a quiet emptiness lingered inside him. His house was neat, the farm in good order, but there was no laughter, no warmth, only silence and memories of what once was. He had loved his wife dearly. She had been kind, cheerful, and full of life. Losing her had been the hardest thing he had ever faced. At first, he had struggled just to get out of bed, to take care of the animals, and to tend to the crops. Friends and neighbors had tried to help, but he insisted on managing the farm himself. Over time, the farm flourished, but Thomas remained lonely. His heart longed for someone to share his life with, not just for company, but for understanding, for partnership, for love. One morning, after finishing his work with the cows, Thomas decided he would finally take action. He had watched the seasons pass, seeing families grow and neighbors find happiness, and he realized it was time he tried to find a wife. Not just any woman, but someone who could understand the rhythm of farm life, who would laugh and cry with him, and who would stand by him through the hard work and hardships of life. He wanted someone sincere, kind, and strong, not necessarily wealthy or fancy, but someone with a heart that matched his own. He dressed carefully that morning, brushing the dust from his coat and smoothing his hair. With a firm resolve, he set out toward the nearby town, a place bustling with life compared to the quiet solitude of his farm. Shops were opening, children were running in the streets, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery floated in the air. Thomas walked slowly, taking in the sights, searching for women who might catch his eye, not just for beauty, but for character, for warmth. He began by visiting families he had known for years. He spoke politely with the daughters of neighbors and friends, complimenting their manners and inquiring about their interests. Some were kind, some shy, and others polite but distant, but no one sparked the feeling Thomas had hoped for. Some were interested in wealth, some in city life, and a few seemed more concerned with gossip and appearances than with hard work or honesty. He left each house feeling slightly disappointed, his hope dimming with each polite goodbye. As Thomas walked along the main street, his eyes wandered to the townspeople going about their day. A group of women laughed by the well, holding their baskets and chatting. They looked elegant and well-dressed, their hands manicured, their voices filled with confidence. Yet as he watched, Thomas felt a sense of detachment. They seemed too distant, too focused on appearances. He knew that farm life was tough, that it required patience, resilience, and the willingness to face challenges together. These women, although beautiful and well-mannered, seemed worlds apart from the life he knew. Just as he was about to leave the street, his eyes fell on someone sitting quietly near the edge of the square, by the old stone well. She was alone, her clothes simple and worn, her hands rough from work. She was not laughing with anyone, nor did she call attention to herself. She simply sat, carefully arranging a small basket of vegetables she had for sale. Something about the way she focused on her task, her calm demeanor, and the quiet strength in her posture caught Thomas's attention. There was a stillness about her, a dignity that did not come from wealth or beauty, but from character. Thomas found himself walking closer, curious. The townspeople bustled past, some glancing at her with pity or mild judgment, noting her poverty, but she did not seem to notice. She was entirely absorbed in her work, her eyes scanning each vegetable, her hands moving carefully. Thomas watched quietly, and he felt a strange warmth inside him, a sense that perhaps here, in this humble, quiet figure, was something he had been searching for, something real. He cleared his throat softly, and she looked up. Her eyes were alert, sharp, but kind. There was no arrogance in her gaze, no pretense. She nodded politely and he returned the gesture. For a moment, they simply observed one another. Thomas could not explain why, but he felt drawn to her. Her name, he would later learn, was Mary. She was known in the town as the poorest woman around, but as he looked at her now, he saw something far richer than the wealth of the women he had visited earlier. There was a quiet strength, an honesty, and a resilience in her that spoke to him deeply. He decided to approach her. "Good morning," he said warmly, his voice steady. "My name is Thomas. I have noticed you here and I wanted to say hello." Mary blinked, a little surprised, but she smiled politely. "Good morning, sir. I am Mary." "How can I help you?" Her voice was soft yet firm. It carried a sense of pride despite her circumstances. Thomas hesitated for a moment, unsure how to continue. He did not want to frighten her, nor did he wish to appear condescending. I was just admiring your work," he said carefully. "You are very diligent and careful with your vegetables. That is something I respect greatly." Mary's eyes softened slightly and she nodded. "Thank you, sir. I try my best. Every day is a challenge, but I do what I can." Thomas felt a sudden urge to know more about her. He found himself asking, "Do you live nearby? Do you have family to help you?" She paused, considering her words, then replied honestly, "I live with my younger siblings. My parents passed away some years ago. We manage as best we can. It is not easy, but we make do." Thomas felt a pang in his chest. He had known hardship in his own life, but hearing of hers made him respect her even more. There was no complaint, no bitterness, only quiet courage and determination. He realized then that life had given him many chances to meet someone, but perhaps the right person was not the one who appeared perfect on the outside. Perhaps it was someone like Mary, someone with a heart and strength that could not be measured by wealth or status. Over the next few days, Thomas found himself returning to the same spot. He would pretend to trade goods, ask about the town, or simply watch from a distance. Each time he learned a little more about her, her kindness to neighbors, her careful attention to her siblings, her willingness to help anyone in need. And each time his admiration grew. But Thomas also noticed the whispers of the townspeople. They questioned his interest in Mary, the poor woman who had little to offer in terms of wealth or family connections. "Why bother with her?" they would say. "She is not suitable for a man of your standing." Thomas tried to ignore the gossip, though he could not completely block it out. Deep down, he knew that what he felt was genuine, and he was willing to face criticism if it meant being honest with himself. One afternoon, a sudden rainstorm swept over the town. People scrambled for cover, running into shops and doorways. Thomas saw Mary struggling to cover her basket and protect her siblings, who had been nearby. Without thinking, he ran to her side, lifting the basket and guiding the children to a safe corner under the awning of a shop. Mary looked at him, surprised and grateful. "Thank you, sir. You didn't have to do that." Thomas smiled, a little embarrassed but happy to help. "I could not just watch," he said simply. "It would not feel right." As they stood together, sharing the small shelter from the rain, Thomas felt a connection he had not felt in years. It was more than attraction. It was a sense of understanding, of recognizing someone who had faced life with courage and dignity. For the first time since his wife's passing, he felt hope. Perhaps this humble, poor woman held the key to the companionship he had longed for all these years. The rain continued to fall, and Thomas and Mary watched the drops glisten on the cobblestones. He found himself wanting to speak more, to know her thoughts, her dreams, and her fears. Mary, though cautious, did not move away. There was a sense of trust beginning to form between them, small but undeniable. As the storm eased, Thomas realized he had to return to his farm, but he did not want to leave her. "I will see you again," he said quietly. "I hope that is all right." Mary nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Yes, sir, I would like that." Thomas left the town that day with a renewed sense of purpose. He had not found the perfect wife among the wealthy or well-dressed women of the town. Instead, He had discovered someone far more valuable, someone whose heart, strength, and kindness shone brighter than any riches. He knew then that the journey to find love might not be about appearances or social standing, but about seeing the true character of a person. And in that moment, Thomas felt something he had not felt in many years: hope, excitement, and the possibility that life still held unexpected joy. The widowed farmer, searching for a companion, had found a spark in the poorest woman in town, a spark that promised a future filled with understanding, partnership, and perhaps love. Little did Thomas know, this was only the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. Mary woke the next morning to the soft light of the sun streaming through the small window of her modest home. Her siblings were already up, helping her prepare breakfast and tidy the little room they shared. Life had always been a struggle for Mary. Ever since their parents had passed, she had carried the responsibility of caring for her younger siblings on her shoulders. She worked tirelessly, doing laundry for neighbors, selling vegetables in the market, and cooking meals for her small family. Despite the hardships, she had learned to face each day with courage and quiet determination. After breakfast, Mary packed her basket with fresh vegetables and prepared to head to the town square. She wanted to arrive early before the crowd grew so she could set up her spot near the well and attract buyers. She carried her basket carefully, balancing it as she walked. The streets were already lively, with merchants opening their shops and townspeople bustling about their daily routines. Mary greeted a few familiar faces, smiling politely, though most were too busy to return her greeting. She had learned long ago that life required focus, and distractions were a luxury she could not afford. As she approached the square, her eyes scanned the crowd. She saw Thomas standing near the edge, not far from where she usually set up. Her heart skipped a beat, though she tried not to show it. She was wary of strangers, especially men from wealthier families, but there was something different about him. He had helped her the day before during the rainstorm, showing kindness without expecting anything in return. Mary respected that. She had learned to recognize genuine people, and Thomas, in his quiet and thoughtful way, seemed to be one of them. Thomas noticed Mary as she set down her basket. He approached her with a gentle smile, careful not to startle her. "Good morning, Mary," he said. His voice carried warmth and there was no trace of judgment or superiority. "How are you this morning?" Mary looked up, slightly surprised, and returned his smile with a polite nod. "Good morning, sir. I am well, thank you. And you?" "I am well too," Thomas replied. "I hope business is good today." Mary shrugged modestly. "It is not much, but it is enough to feed my family." She looked down at her hands, rough and calloused from work, and added quietly, "Every day is a challenge, but we manage." Thomas felt a deep admiration for her words. Here was a woman who faced life with courage, who worked hard and never complained, who cared for her family despite her own struggles. He knew that he had never met anyone like her before. Most people focused on wealth, beauty, or social status, but Mary's strength came from within. He wanted to know more about her, to understand her thoughts, her dreams, and the world she lived in. Over the next few weeks, Thomas found himself visiting the town more often. Sometimes he pretended to buy vegetables. Other times he simply walked past, hoping for a glimpse of Mary. Each time he saw her, he noticed something new: the careful way she arranged her goods, the patience she showed to customers, the gentle way she spoke to children who came by to play near the well. Thomas admired her deeply, but he was also careful. He did not want to frighten her or appear insincere. He wanted to earn her trust slowly, as a friend first, before anything more. Mary, for her part, began to notice Thomas more often. She was cautious, aware that men of wealth or standing sometimes showed kindness with hidden motives. She had learned to protect herself and her siblings, to be wary of those who might take advantage of her situation. Yet, Thomas's presence was different. There was honesty in his gaze, a quiet warmth that made her feel safe. She found herself looking forward to his visits, wondering what he might say, or simply hoping to catch a glimpse of his kind smile. One afternoon, Thomas approached Mary with a small basket of apples. "I thought you might like these," he said, offering them to her. "I saw them at the market and remembered you liked fresh fruit." Mary's eyes widened slightly. She hesitated before accepting the gift. "Thank you, sir. That is very kind of you." Thomas shook his head. "Call me Thomas, please. There is no need for formality between us." Mary smiled faintly. "Very well, Thomas," she said. "Thank you again." It was a small gesture, but it meant a great deal to Mary. She had learned to expect little from people, and yet here was a man who showed thoughtfulness simply for her sake, without asking for anything in return. Slowly she began to open up, sharing small details of her life with him. How she tended the garden behind her house, how she cooked meals for her siblings, and the ways she managed to stretch every coin to make ends meet. Thomas listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging. He asked questions with genuine curiosity, wanting to understand her world fully. As days turned into weeks, their friendship grew stronger. Thomas would help her with heavy baskets when no one was around, or offer advice on caring for the garden. Mary, though cautious, began to trust him more. She appreciated his kindness, his patience, and his willingness to treat her as an equal rather than as someone beneath him in status. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not for what she lacked, but for who she was. Their growing friendship did not go unnoticed. The townspeople began to whisper, some with curiosity, others with judgment. "Why does a man like Thomas spend time with her?" they asked. "She has nothing to offer him." Thomas ignored the gossip, knowing that true connections were not built on wealth or appearances. Mary, too, tried to ignore the whispers, though it sometimes made her uneasy. She had faced judgment before, and she was determined not to let it affect her feelings or her trust in Thomas. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Thomas invited Mary to walk with him to the edge of the town, where the fields began. She hesitated, unsure if it was proper, but curiosity and a desire to spend time with him overcame her caution. They walked in silence at first, listening to the soft rustling of the wind through the grass and the distant sounds of farm animals settling in for the night. Finally, Thomas spoke. "Mary, I want you to know that I admire you greatly. Not for your beauty, not for your position, but for your heart. Your strength, your kindness, your dedication to your family, these are qualities I value more than anything." Mary felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had not expected such words, and yet they resonated deeply within her. "Thomas, I thank you," she said softly. "It is not easy to be heard or understood. I appreciate your words." Thomas smiled gently. "I hope that in time you will allow me to help you, not just with the small things, but in life. I do not wish to take anything from you, but to walk alongside you as a partner and friend." Mary looked at him, considering his words. Trust did not come easily, but she had seen the sincerity in his actions, the honesty in his heart. She felt a flicker of hope, a possibility that life could be brighter, not just for her, but for her siblings as well. I will think about it," she said finally, her voice quiet but determined. Thomas nodded, understanding her caution. "That is all I ask. There is no rush. I will wait, Mary, as long as it takes." From that day on, their bond grew stronger. Thomas continued to visit, helping her with her daily chores, sharing small moments of laughter, and offering comfort during difficult times. Mary began to feel a sense of security and companionship she had never known before. She still worked hard, still faced the challenges of poverty, but there was a lightness in her heart now, a sense that she was not alone, that someone genuinely cared for her and respected her. One particularly harsh afternoon, when the sun beat down mercilessly and the town seemed quiet under its heat, Thomas offered to help Mary carry her heavier baskets to the market. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. Together, they navigated the crowded streets, Thomas lifting the heavier loads with ease, while Mary carried the smaller ones. People in the town whispered and stared, but neither of them cared. In those moments, it was not about judgment or wealth. It was about teamwork, understanding, and growing closeness. By the end of the day, Mary felt a sense of relief and gratitude. She had always managed alone, but with Thomas's help, the task had become lighter, even enjoyable. She looked at him, seeing not just a stranger or a helper, but someone who genuinely cared, someone whose presence brought comfort and hope. As the weeks passed, Thomas and Mary continued to learn about each other. He shared stories of his past, the joys and sorrows he had experienced, and Mary shared hers in return. They laughed together, they worked together, and slowly, a bond stronger than friendship began to form, a connection built on trust, respect, and understanding. Mary began to realize that Thomas was different from anyone she had ever known. He did not see her poverty as a weakness, nor did he expect her to change who she was. He valued her heart, her strength, and her spirit. And for Thomas, Mary was more than he had ever hoped to find. She was the woman whose kindness and courage reminded him of the beauty of life, even after loss. By the time the sun set each evening, Mary would return home with her siblings, feeling a warmth in her heart that she had not felt in years. And Thomas would walk back to his farm, his mind filled with thoughts of Mary, the poorest woman in town who had become the richest part of his heart. Thomas woke early that morning, the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon. The farm was quiet, except for the low murmur of the wind through the trees and the distant sound of roosters crowing. He had spent the night thinking about Mary, her gentle smile, her quiet strength, and the way her eyes seemed to see him for who he truly was. He realized he cared for her more deeply than he had expected, and he wanted to show her that he was not just a passing acquaintance, but someone she could trust and rely upon. He decided to visit Mary that morning, hoping to offer some help in her daily work. Carrying a small basket of tools and supplies, he set out for the town square. As he walked, he thought about how life had brought them together in such an unexpected way. He had spent years searching for someone to share his life with, and yet it had taken seeing the simplest, humblest person to show him what true connection really meant. When Thomas arrived at the square, he saw Mary already setting up her small stall with vegetables, fruits, and a few handmade goods. She looked tired but determined, moving with practiced efficiency. Her younger siblings ran around, helping in small ways while Mary kept a watchful eye on them. Thomas approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning, Mary," he said warmly. She looked up, her expression softening as she recognized him. "Good morning, Thomas. What brings you here so early?" "I thought I might help you today," he replied with a gentle smile. "It seems like a busy morning, and I have a few things that might make your work easier." Mary hesitated for a moment. She was used to doing everything on her own, and accepting help was not always easy, but she also knew that Thomas's presence was different. There was no expectation or judgment in his offer, only genuine care. "Thank you, Thomas," she said quietly. "I appreciate it." Together they arranged the stall, moved baskets, and organized the goods. Thomas found small ways to assist, carrying heavier loads and offering advice when asked. Mary began to relax in his presence, realizing that he was not there to take control, but to support her. For the first time, she felt that someone was truly on her side, sharing both the work and the burden. As the morning passed, townspeople began to arrive, purchasing goods and greeting Mary. Thomas noticed the way she interacted with each person, polite yet firm, patient yet efficient. He admired her ability to handle difficult customers without losing her temper or composure. He could see the strength she carried within herself, a strength born from years of hardship and responsibility. During a brief moment of quiet, Thomas and Mary sat together on a small bench near the well. They shared a simple meal of bread and cheese, talking quietly about their lives, hopes, and challenges. Mary spoke of her dreams for her siblings, wanting them to have opportunities she had never had. Thomas shared stories of his life on the farm, the struggles he had faced, and the lessons he had learned from loss and hard work. Through their conversations, their bond grew stronger. Mary found herself laughing at Thomas's gentle humor, enjoying the way he spoke with sincerity and thoughtfulness. Thomas felt a deep sense of admiration for Mary, not just for her kindness and courage, but for her intelligence, her wisdom, and her ability to face life's challenges with grace. As the day went on, Thomas continued to help Mary, guiding customers, carrying baskets, and offering small gestures of support. The townspeople began to notice their connection, some whispering in curiosity, others in disapproval. "Why does a man like Thomas spend so much time with her?" they murmured. "She is so poor and he is well off. What could she possibly offer him?" Thomas ignored the gossip, focusing instead on Mary and her needs. He understood that true partnership was not about wealth, status, or appearances, but about trust, respect, and shared values. Mary, too, learned to ignore the whispers, realizing that Thomas's intentions were genuine and that their connection was real. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Thomas suggested they take a walk outside the town. Mary hesitated, worried about leaving her stall unattended, but Thomas assured her he would help manage it while she was away. Together they walked toward the fields, the golden light of the setting sun casting a warm glow over the landscape. They walked in silence at first, enjoying the peaceful sounds of nature, the rustle of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the distant lowing of cows. Thomas finally spoke, his voice gentle and sincere. "Mary, I have been thinking a lot about you lately. About the way you care for your siblings, the way you work tirelessly without complaint, and the kindness you show to everyone around you. I admire you more than words can express." Mary looked at him, her heart beating faster. She had grown fond of Thomas over the past weeks, but hearing his words made her feel a mixture of hope and fear. "Thomas, I don't know what to say," she replied softly. "I am not used to people speaking so openly about their feelings." "You don't need to say anything right now," Thomas said reassuringly. "I only want you to know that my intentions are true. I wish to support you, not take anything from you. I want to walk beside you, share the burdens of life, and be someone you can rely on." Mary felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had not experienced in years. She had always been cautious, always aware of the difficulties life could bring, but Thomas's words gave her a sense of comfort and trust. "Thank you, Thomas," she said quietly. "That means more than I can express." As they continued to walk, Thomas noticed the exhaustion in Mary's steps and offered his arm for support. She accepted, leaning on him slightly as they made their way back toward the town. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the growing trust and closeness between them. Over the next few weeks, Thomas continued to visit Mary regularly. He helped her with her daily tasks, shared meals, and spent time talking about dreams, hopes, and the future. Mary began to see Thomas not just as a helper or friend, but as someone who genuinely cared for her well-being and happiness. She felt a sense of security and companionship she had never known before. One day, Thomas suggested that Mary come to his farm to see where he lived and to meet some of his animals. Mary was nervous at first, unsure of what to expect, but curiosity and a desire to spend more time with him overcame her hesitation. When they arrived at the farm, Mary was struck by its beauty and the care Thomas had taken to maintain it. The fields were green and well-tended, the animals healthy, and the house warm and welcoming. Thomas showed Mary around the farm, explaining the work he did and the routines he followed. Mary listened attentively, asking questions and offering suggestions. She was impressed by Thomas's knowledge and dedication, and she felt a growing sense of admiration for him. Thomas, in turn, was pleased to see Mary's interest and enthusiasm. He valued her opinions and insights, recognizing her intelligence and practical wisdom. As the sun set over the farm, Thomas and Mary sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. The moment was peaceful and intimate, filled with a quiet sense of connection and understanding. Thomas turned to Mary and spoke softly. "Mary, I want you to know that you are special to me. I have never met anyone like you, and I hope that, in time, you will allow me to be a part of your life, not just as a friend, but as someone who truly cares for you." Mary felt her heart swell with emotion. She had grown to trust Thomas, to value his presence, and to appreciate his kindness and sincerity. Yet she also felt the weight of her responsibilities and the uncertainties of the future. "Thomas, I care for you too," she admitted softly. "But I need time to consider what this all means. My life is complicated and I must think carefully before making any decisions." Thomas nodded, understanding her hesitation. "I will wait, Mary. There is no rush. I only want you to feel safe and confident in whatever choice you make." In the weeks that followed, their bond continued to deepen. Thomas and Mary worked together, shared moments of laughter, and faced challenges side by side. They learned to trust one another, to rely on each other's strengths, and to offer support when needed. Mary began to see a future where she could be happy, where her family could be cared for, and where she could share her life with someone who truly valued her. One evening, as the town prepared for a small festival, Thomas invited Mary to attend. She hesitated, worried about leaving her siblings and her stall, but Thomas assured her that he would help manage everything in her absence. Together they walked to the festival, enjoying the sights, sounds, and laughter of the townspeople. For the first time in years, Mary felt a sense of joy and freedom, a feeling she had thought was lost forever. As they walked through the festival, Thomas turned to Mary and said softly, "I hope you know, Mary, that no matter what happens, I will always be here for you. You are not alone anymore." Mary looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and warmth. "Thank you, Thomas. I believe that now." And in that moment, both of them realized that their connection was more than friendship. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and understanding, a bond that would continue to grow and shape their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The next morning, Thomas woke with a sense of determination. He had spent the past weeks getting to know Mary and witnessing her strength, kindness, and resilience. He had also seen the quiet way she handled her siblings, cared for her neighbors, and faced life's daily struggles without complaint. Thomas realized that his feelings for her had grown stronger than he had ever imagined. He wanted to do more than just help her occasionally. He wanted to be there for her, fully and sincerely, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Mary, meanwhile, was busy with her usual morning routine. She had risen early, cooked a simple breakfast for her younger siblings, and tended to the small garden behind their home. Life had never been easy for her, and she had learned to take on responsibility without complaint. Yet despite her many tasks, she found herself thinking about Thomas more often. His kindness, his patience, and his willingness to understand her life made her heart feel lighter. She had begun to trust him in ways she had not trusted anyone before. When Thomas arrived in town that day, Mary greeted him with a small, polite smile. "Good morning, Thomas," she said, arranging her vegetables for the day. "Good morning, Mary," Thomas replied warmly. "I brought something that might help you today." He carried a basket of fresh tools, seeds, and a few household items he thought might make her work easier. Mary looked surprised. "Thomas, you didn't have to, thank you." "I want to," he said simply. "I see how hard you work every day and I want to help, even in small ways." Together, they worked through the morning. Thomas carried heavy baskets, helped customers, and even offered suggestions for organizing the stall more efficiently. Mary began to feel more at ease around him, realizing that his help was not meant to show superiority, but to make her life a little easier. They laughed together when small mishaps occurred, like a basket tipping over or a child accidentally knocking over a stack of apples. These moments, though simple, brought them closer together. As the day continued, townspeople began to whisper about Thomas and Mary. Some were curious, others judgmental. "Why does a man like Thomas spend so much time with her?" they asked. "She is poor and he is well off. What could she offer him?" Thomas ignored the gossip, but Mary could not help feeling a little uneasy. She had faced judgment all her life, and hearing it again reminded her of the difficulties she had endured. Yet she also knew that Thomas had never treated her differently because of her circumstances. His actions and words had shown her that he valued her for who she was, not for what she owned. That evening, Thomas suggested they walk to a quiet part of the town, away from the hustle and bustle of the square. Mary hesitated, concerned about leaving her siblings in the stall, but Thomas assured her that everything would be taken care of. Reluctantly, she agreed, trusting him as she had begun to trust few people in her life. As they walked, the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the fields and rooftops. The streets were quieter now, and the soft sounds of the evening, children laughing in the distance, the clatter of carts, and the chirping of birds returning to their nests, made the moment feel peaceful and intimate. Thomas stopped and turned to Mary, speaking softly. "Mary, I know life has been difficult for you. I see the challenges you face every day, and I admire your strength. I want you to know that I am here for you, not just as a friend, but as someone who cares deeply about your well-being." Mary looked at him, her heart beating faster. She had grown fond of Thomas, and his words touched her deeply. "Thomas, I appreciate everything you have done for me. I have never met anyone like you. You are kind, patient, and genuine, but I am cautious. Life has taught me to be careful with my heart." "I understand," Thomas said gently. "I do not wish to rush you or pressure you. I only hope that in time you will allow me to be a part of your life in a meaningful way. You do not have to decide today. I will wait as long as it takes." Mary felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of comfort and hope that she had not felt in years. She realized that Thomas's care was real, that his intentions were true, and that she could trust him. Yet she also felt the weight of her responsibilities and the uncertainties of the future. She needed to be sure that accepting his help and companionship would not bring more complications than relief. Over the following days, Thomas continued to demonstrate his commitment. He helped Mary's younger siblings with their studies, carried heavy baskets to the market, and even repaired parts of her small home that were falling into disrepair. Each act, no matter how small, showed Mary that he was serious about being there for her and her family. She began to feel a sense of stability and security she had never known before. One day, a sudden storm hit the town. Heavy rain poured down, and the wind blew fiercely, threatening Mary's small stall. Without hesitation, Thomas ran to her side, helping her secure her goods and shield her younger siblings from the rain. Mary watched in awe as he worked tirelessly, showing not only strength but dedication and concern for her safety. The townspeople watched in silence, realizing that Thomas's actions were not out of obligation or show, they were genuine. After the storm passed, Thomas and Mary sat together under a large tree, sharing a simple meal of bread and cheese. Mary felt a sense of relief and gratitude. She realized that Thomas's presence had become a source of comfort and support, not just for her, but for her siblings as well. She began to imagine a future where life might be easier, where she could share her burdens with someone who truly cared. As their friendship deepened, challenges began to arise. Some townspeople disapproved of their growing closeness, spreading rumors and questioning Mary's intentions. Others doubted Thomas's sincerity, suggesting that a man of his standing could do better. Mary felt torn. She wanted to trust Thomas completely, but the judgment and expectations of society weighed heavily on her. She had learned to navigate life's difficulties alone, and the idea of depending on someone else was both comforting and frightening. Thomas, however, remained steadfast. He ignored the whispers and focused on supporting Mary in every way he could. He encouraged her to express her thoughts and feelings, to share her fears and hopes without hesitation. Slowly, Mary began to open her heart, realizing that Thomas's care was not conditional on wealth, status, or appearance. He valued her for who she was, and that realization brought her a sense of peace she had longed for. One afternoon, Thomas suggested they work together on a small project, planting a new garden behind Mary's home. Mary agreed, curious and eager to see what they could accomplish together. They spent the day digging, planting, and watering, laughing and talking as they worked. For Mary, it was a rare moment of joy and lightness, a break from the constant responsibilities that had defined her life for so long. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Thomas and Mary stood back to admire their work. The garden, though small, represented more than just plants. It symbolized hope, growth, and the possibility of a brighter future. Thomas turned to Mary, his expression serious yet gentle. "Mary, I want you to know that I am committed to you. I want to be part of your life, to support you and your family, and to face whatever challenges come our way together." Mary felt a mixture of emotions, gratitude, hope, and a touch of fear. She had come to care for Thomas deeply, but the weight of her responsibilities and the uncertainties of life made her cautious. "Thomas, I care for you too," she said softly, "but I need time to think. My life is complicated, and I want to be sure that whatever I decide is right for my family and for me." "I understand," Thomas said with a reassuring smile. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere. I will wait for you, and I will continue to support you in any way I can." In the weeks that followed, Thomas and Mary continued to grow closer. They faced challenges together, laughed together, and shared moments of quiet intimacy that strengthened their bond. Mary began to feel a sense of security and hope that she had never experienced before. She realized that true partnership was not about wealth, status, or appearances. It was about trust, respect, and shared values. One evening, as the town celebrated a small festival, Thomas invited Mary to join him. She hesitated, concerned about leaving her siblings and her stall, but Thomas assured her that everything would be managed. Together they walked through the streets, enjoying the music, laughter, and warm glow of lanterns. For the first time in years, Mary felt a sense of joy and freedom, a feeling she had thought was lost forever. As they walked, Thomas turned to Mary and said softly, "No matter what happens, Mary, I will always be here for you. You are not alone anymore. I care for you deeply, and I hope that in time you will allow me to be a part of your life." Mary looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth and gratitude. "Thank you, Thomas. I believe that now." In that moment, both of them realized that their connection had grown into something deeper than friendship. It was a bond built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect, a partnership that would continue to grow and shape their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The morning air was crisp and fresh as Thomas woke on the day he had been quietly anticipating for weeks. Today felt different. There was a sense of possibility in the wind, a lightness in the quiet sounds of his farm. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting golden rays across the fields and illuminating the rows of crops he had tended with care. But Thomas's thoughts were not on the farm. They were on Mary, the woman who had changed his life in ways he never expected. Mary, too, woke with a mix of excitement and nerves. She had spent the night thinking, weighing her feelings and considering the future. Life had been difficult for her and her siblings, but Thomas had shown her that partnership, trust, and love could exist even amidst struggle. She had come to care for him deeply, and the thought of building a life together filled her with hope and courage. As Thomas arrived in town, Mary was already at the market, preparing her vegetables and goods for the day. Her younger siblings ran about, helping where they could, and Mary managed everything with her usual efficiency. When she saw Thomas approaching, she felt a flutter in her chest. He was carrying a small basket of bread, fresh from the bakery, and a few fruits. His presence brought a warmth that no one else could. "Good morning, Mary," Thomas greeted, his voice calm and steady yet filled with care. "Good morning, Thomas," Mary replied, a gentle smile on her face. "Thank you for the bread. It is thoughtful of you." Thomas shook his head. "I thought you might enjoy it." "Consider it a small gesture to start the day, but I also have something else on my mind, something important." Mary looked at him, curiosity and a hint of nervousness in her eyes. She had sensed that today might be different, that their relationship was about to take a step forward. "What is it, Thomas?" she asked softly. Thomas took a deep breath and spoke with honesty. "Mary, I have grown to care for you deeply. Over the past weeks I have seen your strength, your kindness, and your courage. I want to be more than a friend to you. I want to be a partner, someone who stands beside you through the challenges of life, someone who shares in your joys and burdens. I wish to marry you." Mary's heart skipped a beat. She felt a rush of emotions, joy, relief, fear, and excitement all at once. For so long, she had been cautious, guarding herself and her siblings against disappointment and heartache. But now, Thomas's words offered a possibility she had never dared to imagine, a life filled with love, partnership, and hope. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, I care for you as well. I believe in you and I trust you. But I need to consider my family, my responsibilities. Will you wait for me?" Thomas smiled, a mixture of pride and warmth in his expression. "I will wait as long as it takes, Mary. You and your family are my priority, and I only wish to support and care for you. Take all the time you need." Over the next few days, Mary and Thomas spent even more time together. They worked side by side at her stall, tending to customers, organizing goods, and sharing laughter. Thomas helped repair parts of her home, carried heavy loads, and offered guidance and encouragement whenever needed. Mary began to see that life with him could be easier, brighter, and more joyful. She also noticed that Thomas did not seek to control her or dictate her choices. Instead, he respected her independence and her intelligence, valuing her opinions and decisions. The townspeople, who had once whispered and questioned their connection, began to notice the sincerity of Thomas's actions. Slowly, judgment turned into admiration, and curiosity gave way to acceptance. Mary felt a sense of relief, knowing that their relationship was based on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than appearances or social expectations. One afternoon, Thomas suggested they visit his farm together. Mary agreed, curious to see where he lived and eager to experience a part of his life. As they arrived, Mary's eyes widened at the sight of the lush fields, healthy animals, and well-maintained house. The farm was a reflection of Thomas himself, careful, thoughtful, and full of life. Thomas showed Mary around, explaining the routines, the crops, and the animals. Mary listened attentively, asking questions and offering her own insights. She was impressed by his knowledge, dedication, and work ethic. For the first time, she could imagine a life where they could work together, share responsibilities, and build something lasting and meaningful. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fields, Thomas and Mary sat on the porch of the farmhouse, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. The moment was quiet, yet filled with unspoken emotions and possibilities. Thomas reached for Mary's hand, and she accepted, feeling a sense of comfort and connection that she had never experienced before. "Mary," Thomas said softly, "I want to spend my life with you. I want to be your partner, your friend, and your support. I do not care about wealth, status, or appearances. What matters to me is your heart, your strength, and the life we can build together." Tears welled in Mary's eyes. She had spent years facing challenges alone, and the thought of sharing her life with someone who truly cared for her was overwhelming. "Thomas, I want that too," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I want to build a life with you, and I want my family to be part of it. I trust you, and I believe in us." The weeks that followed were filled with preparations for their simple but heartfelt wedding. Mary's siblings helped with decorations and small tasks, eager to see their sister happy. Thomas worked tirelessly to ensure that everything was ready, from the seating to the flowers, and even to the food for the small gathering of townspeople who would witness their union. On the day of the wedding, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm light over the town. Mary walked down the aisle, her simple dress flowing, her heart racing with excitement and love. Thomas waited at the front, his eyes filled with admiration and joy. The townspeople, once skeptical, now watched with smiles and warmth, recognizing the sincerity and beauty of their connection. As they exchanged vows, Thomas promised to support, respect, and care for Mary for the rest of his life. Mary promised to stand beside Thomas, to share in his joys and challenges, and to build a life together rooted in trust, love, and mutual respect. Their hands were joined, and with that simple gesture, two hearts became one. After the ceremony, the newlyweds celebrated with a small gathering of friends, neighbors, and family. There was laughter, music, and the sharing of simple meals. Mary's siblings played nearby, their faces filled with happiness, and Thomas's farmhands shared stories and jokes, adding to the warmth of the day. The celebration was not extravagant, but it was full of joy, love, and genuine connection. In the weeks and months that followed, Thomas and Mary settled into their life together. They worked side by side on the farm, shared meals, and cared for each other and their families. Mary's siblings were supported and guided, and the small home grew warmer and fuller with laughter and love. Thomas continued to show kindness, patience, and respect, and Mary continued to inspire him with her strength, resilience, and gentle heart. Life was not without challenges. There were days of hard work, unexpected problems with crops, and moments of doubt and fatigue. But through it all, Thomas and Mary faced each challenge together, relying on their trust, understanding, and love. They learned to communicate openly, to share responsibilities, and to support one another in both small and significant ways. One quiet evening, after a long day of work in the fields, Thomas and Mary sat together on the porch of their home. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Mary leaned against Thomas, feeling the warmth of his presence, and Thomas held her close, appreciating the life they had built together. "Thomas," Mary said softly, "I never imagined life could be like this. I thought I would always face hardships alone, but you have changed everything. You have given me hope, love, and a family to share my life with." Thomas smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Mary, you have changed my life as well. You showed me that true connection is not about wealth or appearances. It is about trust, respect, and the heart. I am grateful for every moment we have shared and for every challenge we have faced together." As the evening grew darker and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Thomas and Mary sat in peaceful silence, holding hands and feeling the warmth of their love. They had found something rare and precious, an understanding, a partnership, and a bond that would endure through life's challenges and joys. Their story was not just about finding love, but about finding someone who truly saw them for who they were. Thomas had found a heart full of courage, kindness, and resilience. Mary had found someone who valued her, supported her, and stood beside her through every challenge. Together, they had built a life of hope, trust, and genuine happiness. And as they looked out over the farm, the fields, and the home they had created, both Thomas and Mary knew that their journey had only just begun. They had found each other in the most unexpected way, and together they would face the future with love, courage, and unwavering partnership.